Hello, welcome to another Zoom meeting and podcast of Here's Tom with the Weather, where we investigate the plethora of higher powers that populate the vast universe of 12-step recovery, where alcoholics riff out on step 3 and 11, as prescribed by the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, who encourage us to find some kind of higher power as long as it's not us. We speak to people with all manner of higher powers, from those who are atheists, sufis, agnostics, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, followers of Islam, Hermetics, Paganists, non-duality, and the Red Road. We leave no stone unturned. It's our aim to promote understanding and open-mindedness so that alcoholics and addicts can find a higher power of their own to stay sober and carry the message. We promote tolerance and empathy for folks who might just have different spiritual practices than us. It's all about live and let live. And please remember, this is not an AA meeting or an NA meeting. It's just an investigation of some people's version of the truth. And sometimes we speak to seekers, to gurus, and sometimes not to people necessarily in recovery, but today we are. And today we're going to speak to Woody Gruber. How you doing, Woody? Get him unmuted.
There we go.
How you doing, mate?
Yes, doing great.
Good
Welcome, good day.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read a short bio of you that I've got here. There was a lot of stuff, so I've had to sort of narrow it all down a little bit and distill it down. So it goes like this. So born on the Nebraska prairies and visited by empowering visions as a child, Woody found his healing path in shamanism in the 1990s and has trained with diverse and numerous World Heritage teachers. He's a graduate of programs with Sandra Ingerman, Betsy Bergstrom, Foundation for some Shamanic Studies, as well as training in California and Sundance and Peggy Dillon. Woody holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from various universities and has worked with Indigenous Native American people for many years. He is the chief of the fire at the world's largest Lakota Sundance on the reservation in South Dakota, US. He travels around the US to teach and perform healing ceremonies with a loving heart and a warm sense of humor. His work has had a profound impact on hundreds of lives and many communities wherever he goes. His sessions are described as being engaging, fulfilling, and empowering for all. And that's a hell of an introduction. Now, just before I crack on, and I will just go on a little bit further, I just want to give a definition that I found on the internet about shamanism or being a shaman. It's a member of certain traditional societies, especially of the Northern Asia and North and South America, who act as a medium between the visible world and an invisible spirit world, who practice magic or sorcery for purposes of healing, divination, and control over natural events. So, Woody, is that a fair description?
That covers a bit of it, yeah. I would say that covers quite a bit of it. I don't think of myself sometimes as magical because for me, a lot of what happens just feels very natural. Maybe it's the natural religion, but shamanism actually started way before all of the organized religions, as man was seeking to explain to themselves, what the universe was all about. And when Grandma and Grandpa left, where did their spirits go? And who out there can help us?
Okay, so now I don't want to sort of break your anonymity, but I think it's safe to say that that you've been in recovery for quite a number of years. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of how you got to the point of finding a sobriety or recovery? And can you build in that bit about, I love the bit where you had some visions as a child. So, and I know you mentioned before, you almost gave the game away before the interview, but could you just tell us your story in about 5 minutes, if that's okay, mate?
Okay. Well, I was born in 1954 here in Nebraska. Large family. I'm the third of 9 children. My father was a United States Marine during the Second World War, fighting in the Pacific, and he was an alcoholic. As a child, our family suffered various deprivations. I can remember being quite hungry and going through 2 weeks with very little to eat. So I was moved to my grandparents' farm with older brothers to help in the vegetable garden. And we raised chickens and things like that. So when I was 5.5 years old, the summer of 1960, I had a vision there. And there was this I went out to a place where the prairie had never been cut, had never been plowed. And I can only describe it as that I met a supernatural being. I met a goddess. And at first I thought, I was raised in the Catholic faith, and I thought, well, it's got to be Mary. But she had dark skin, more Native American. And 5 years later, I finally saw a picture of the Blessed Virgin of Guadalupe, and I go, that's the lady I met. I kept it to myself because I didn't want people to lock me up. But from that point on, I was always being able to read signs, and I could sense when there were spiritual energies around. So as a teenager, I followed my father into alcoholism. I had a brief period of sobriety in my 20s for about 6 years, and I didn't work my program the first time around very well. So I came back into the program 36 years and 6 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So just going back, just want to go back. Could you describe the female figure? Could you give us a description of what she looked like and paint, maybe give us an idea of, how she appeared?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. What I was looking for were buffalo. Grandpa said this is the way this land was when the buffalo were here. Of course, the buffalo are all gone now. And I was tired, and I laid down, and I laid on the earth, and I thought I was praying to bring the buffalo and the earth would shake. The fourth time when I jumped up, this woman was standing there. She was probably about 5.5 feet tall. She had dark complexion. She was wearing a blue robe that covered most of her and it was shimmering like stars. And she could speak to me, but I was hearing it in my mind, not in my ears. And she said that she knew that I had suffered, that there was a lot more suffering that I would see in my life, but the suffering was not going to be wasted because with it, I'd be able to help others. And she said, if you're not wounded, you can't be a healer. And then at the very end, it was like I was hit by lightning. I fell down. And when I woke up, everybody was gone. But she was very kind. There was just this overwhelming sense of just an all-encompassing peace. It was quite amazing.
Wow. What is, I know we did a description before about your heritage, but can you give us an exact nature of what your heritage is? And is there a history of that in your particular lineage?
Right. On that particular day, there were two things that were happening in my family. And there was what I would call a spirit grandmother, who's an actual flesh and blood grandmother of mine from ancestors I had in New York State. The woman was her father was Haudenosaunee, Iroquois. Her mother was Kitawaban, Cherokee. And so she was a healer, and in the family records, it said that she was making all these potions and herbal medicines for Native Americans. And she was described on the wedding certificate as Black Dutch, which is something they used to put in documents because they didn't want to give Native American people property. Wow. Anyway, on the rest of my family, however, my grandfather was German and Irish, and in his family there was a record of some pretty crazy things. And then his wife, my grandmother, these are the Grubers. She was from Newcastle, and her father was someone of means, and he was a physician that came over to Canada and then came down to Arizona and eventually ended up here in the Midwest for some reason. And then on my mother's side, everyone's like 100% Czech, but that 100% is mixed in with a lot of other, I've got blood from various places. So there are healers. I've discovered there are healers other than spirit grandmother in my lineage.
Wow.
So
That's amazing. So it's you're kind of the nexus of a lot of different lines.
Please,
So
yeah.
just so you sort of realized that you had these visionary things, and I just wanted to say you lost your spiritual path when you descended into alcoholism. It's like you said, you inherited it. It's often been described as a spiritual malady, or some people say it's a mental malady that covers up the spiritual malady. Just explain that process of how you lost your way and how you found some sort of redemption with AA and the 12 steps.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say that I got involved with alcohol and drugs because in part I was trying to run away from a lot of the troubles that were in our family and our life. My father, he'd have these periods of being sober and then down again. And there was this Father Jim that came and helped me. And I never really got into Al-Anon. I probably could have, but I was always working. My father disappeared when I was 14 into the Veterans Hospital and didn't come back. And so I was with two older brothers who were gone. I was literally helping my mother all the way through secondary school, signing paychecks and handing them to mom. And so for me, alcoholism was like this escape. But what was interesting was the spirits really kind of never left. I mean, I was thrown from an automobile at 60 miles an hour when we hit a snowbank, and we were drinking. I was drunk. And, it was probably 10, 11-ish in the evening. And all of a sudden I was back in the car. And my friend was just like, he took all the beer and threw it out of the car, and he couldn't talk about it. And we dropped me off at my house. He said, there was this giant person that shoved you back in the car. I said, yeah, right. But so for me, alcoholism was an escape from the troubles that were in this life. But there was always that, if I chose to go into the unseen world, to step into that world, I got clarity and I got peace of mind, and I got, so I would like go back and forth. And for me, the addiction was very much, chemical and physical, as well as, the mental game. Does that help?
Yeah, sure. That's amazing. So, and how did you feel when you sort of rediscovered that? Because I know for a lot of us, there's people who have no kind of spiritual background whatsoever, and they find a higher power, whatever that might be.
Right.
But for yourself, I guess that must have been I don't know, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but there was some kind of realization of what had happened before, and the whole thing with doing the steps. It was, how did that feel like when you sort of you stumbled back onto the path?
Yeah. Yeah. At the time, I wasn't being very spiritual. And I had a wife and two children. She disappeared one day. There was anger with my mother and my two sisters. I moved into my Chevy Suburban, which is kind of like a big, it's a truck, but it's a car anyway. So I moved into my Chevy Suburban and went on a pretty good bender. And then I realized one day this wasn't working. And it was my son's 5th birthday, and I hadn't seen my kids in 6 weeks. And I really, really horribly missed them. And I was driving around downtown Omaha looking for a place to park and sleep for the night. And I said, that's it. I just can't do this anymore. I've got to walk away from the booze. I've got to get help. I know where the answer is. I've been there before. These people can help me, but how do I find them? And so I'm driving in this area where everybody's stumbling on the sidewalk. And I pulled up next to these two fellas and I said, hey, where's the meeting? And they said, at the intertribal around the corner, and you look for the guy smoking outside. And I said, okay. And they said, you got anything to drink in there? And I said, yeah, I'm not going to need it. I handed them a bottle of wine and some beers and said, see you in rehab. Wow. And off I went. And it was a Native American meeting. And I was in rehab a couple of weeks later. I was able to get into that. And people did kind things for me. There is one thing I want to tell you about rehab. I don't want to forget to say this. I actually did my 30th day in rehab. And the guy that said he would help me, this old Native American guy, he came to the rehab and gave me my 30-day coin. I cannot tell you, when he handed me that 30-day coin, in fact, my whole body is just lighting up right now. I could sense the divine presence in such a strong way. I was like, okay, I've been struggling for a month. There's this program here. People are helping me. With the help of my higher power, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it. I can do this. I'm going to surrender, and I'm all the way. No turning back.
Wow, that's amazing. So just, I know we've only got an hour, and I'm just going to ask anyone in the audience, if you've got a question, put a question to me in chat, or to Anne, or to Kaiser, or to Lebowski, and we'll get it asked. I just wanted to just go on, like, fast forward a little bit. So this spiritual journey that you've been on in sobriety has taken you all over the world, hasn't it? Can you tell us the highlight and maybe some of the more mystical moments? The whole spirit guide, and the liaison between the spirit and the real, or this world anyway, whatever you want to call it, it really fascinates me. Just tell us some of the more mystical moments. I think that's some of the highlights, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh my gosh. There was, when I was working the Sundance fire once, and I probably have a good 200 stories over 14 years plus of the Sundance, this huge storm came up. It was just, the rain came down so fast, and the fire is a very large affair, and it's inside like a berm shaped like a horseshoe, you know, where you walk in through the east gate, and then here's the fire, and you put the stones on there for the sweat lodge, right? Mm-hmm. So we had this massive fire going, and the logs on the bottom were, you know, pretty good size. And the rain's coming down, and there were only two other guys there. There was Charlie from Melbourne and Scotty from Chicago, just the three of us. And I said, boys, we got to get on this, you know? And we would dig a trench and push the water out. So I was the first one in there, and I started this trench, and I looked down in the fire. The water's rolling down the little side hills, the berms, and the whole fire is floating. The logs are floating, and the front half of the fire is underwater. But when I looked down into the fire, all I saw were red hot coals from front to back, all the way through. There were coals burning underwater.
Wow.
I have seen incredible healings. There was a fellow that came up from Australia. He was an Aboriginal fella, and he came to work at the fire, and we were having a good time. His name was Wayne. And we had this fire, this storm that came down, and the spirits had told me to take these 4 logs and set them aside. 2 days later, I would need them. I had the fellows put them in, a roof, and the water's rolling off. And we dug that trench, and then we dug it out and put a little hole, and you take a bucket. So everyone's pitching water, right? Okay, another one of these rain stories. When I finished, Wayne's over there, and the rain stops, and he's looking down into the fire. He says, Woody, come here. And I come over there, and he says, look at that. He said, look down in the fire, and you could see a rainbow of fire. Wow. All the colors. He said, there's the rainbow serpent. The divine is right here in this fire. And I said, that is very cool. He said, no, there's more. And he points at the water course that we dug out. And he goes, and there's the water serpent taking the medicine out to the world. And I said, it's good when it happens, isn't it? I've seen people healed. I tripped over a log at 4 o'clock in the morning there and broke my leg. Literally, a tib-fib break on the backbone, right?
Yeah.
Someone handed me an eagle feather, and I sat and I prayed and worked that eagle feather, And 2 hours later, I was walking around normal. And the Sundance is Leonard Crow Dogs. His wife, Joanne, comes over and she says, you go see the doctor in town, the white people doctor. And I said, I don't want to go there. And she goes, no, on the way back, get me Subway sandwich. So I took her sandwich order and I went to the hospital and they took an x-ray and the lady says, well, it looks like you broke this leg like 2 years ago, right here. And I said, no, that was this morning at 4:00. And she goes, where are you coming from? And I said, the Sundance. She goes, oh, Crow Dogs. Put some tobacco on the fire for me. Here, get out of here. I can't do anything for you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I've just, yeah. And I had some really wonderful adventures teaching in Scotland too. Some of this crazy stuff.
It's interesting what you spoke about there. I'm originally from Australia, and I've got quite a lot of friends in the Indigenous community. And we've actually got a guest coming on here who's an Aboriginal elder who's going to be coming on here in a couple of weeks, Les.
Oh, wonderful.
From Australia, and he's going to hopefully be talking about the same kind of stuff. It's funny how there's a connection with these kind of, like you said, the rainbow serpent in Australia I'm aware of and stuff, and how that sort of, it's all around the world, the similar kind of things of similar spiritual beliefs have materialized. Is that because of an ancient wandering and the kind of the spread out of human beings, or is it just a natural progression in each place that we sprout up, human beings sprout up, that this spirituality occurs,
Regardless of where any of us are from, all of us had ancestors who were indigenous or tribal, and before they came up with rules and this person's an intercessor, and if you want to get to the divine, you have to go through them. Before they came up with that business, people were encouraged to find their way to spiritual. And in shamanism, the way it's practiced here in the West, you're encouraged to do a shamanic journey, meditations, and seek out, those particular spirit animals that'll help you. I did have a Sundance experience where I died and came back, but I will skip that one another day.
No, don't skip it. Tell us.
I was chief of the fire. Everything was going real well, the 4 days of purification. They brought in the new tree. The next day, they were going to start the dance. For those who don't know the Sundance ritual, there's the 4 days of purification and getting ready, then the 4 days of the actual dance. The dancers do not eat or drink anything for those 4 days. The tree is put up and set up in the middle of the arbor, and all the prayers, tobacco offerings are put on the tree. So it's a big thing on tree day. Now, I didn't have a phone at the time, so I went with my friend Gary, and normally I don't leave the Sundance grounds. I don't go to town for anything. I stay in the prayer the whole time. But I wanted desperately to call my wife, so we went up on this hill. The sun was coming down, and I finished talking to my wife, and I handed him the phone, and he was talking to his wife, and suddenly I was struck to the ground. We got back to I couldn't drive my own truck. We got back to the camp, and I had this outrageous chills and fever. It's 100 degrees out, and I'm wrapped up in 2 wool blankets and my star quilt. I was sick all night long. 4:00 in the morning, I go down. They're getting the lodges ready so the dancers can come and sweat before they go to the dance. And there were 3 medicine men sitting there, and I go, guys, I am really sick. I need help. Take me in and doctor me. I literally just asked them. And they all looked at me and they said, go back to the camp and have the ladies wash you with sage water, to purify you. I go back to the camp. My camp sister, she's up and she realizes I'm still sick. So they put me in this sort of a lawn chair that you can lean back in and your legs pop up, and they were literally washing me for hours with water that had sage in it. And they would wring out the cloth and the water would turn black and then it would clear again. Well, they had to change that water multiple times because it would get to a place, and I felt like I was being attacked. And I remember Marcia's looking into my face saying, Woody, don't leave me. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. And the next thing I know, I'm out of my body. I'm flying around the tree. And there was St. Michael. I was like, oh, brilliant. We got an angel here, you know, and two Lakota warrior guys, big, beefy, tough looking brutes. And they took me to the four directions and showed me the power animals of each of those directions for me. But over in the southeast was a tiny little black cloud. 4 times they took me around to meet these animals. And the cloud got bigger and bigger. And on the 4th time, there was a goddess sitting on it. And it was a mother goddess, Ixchel, Ixchel, from the Mayan tradition. And she reminded me that I owed her something from some past existence. And she said, so that you would know that this was true, that this was real, look for my sign at the evening meal. The next thing I know, I'm popping back into my body. And the women are all crying. And here comes this Navajo medicine man that I had seen at 4 a.m. And now it's like maybe 9:30, maybe, yeah. So here comes this medicine man. He takes a towel, a tea towel, and he puts it in the water of the cooler, wrings it out and slaps it on my chest and starts singing my spirit and my body back together again. It's wonderful. It's really magical.
Wow.
And I could see the house where he grew up. The medical doctor finally comes to our camp because they found him. And he goes, how do you feel? And I said, hungry. I want a sandwich and a cup of tea or coffee or something. You know, that night at the evening meal, I remember what the woman had said. And so I called my 2 Sundance sisters, Ruth and Marcia, and I said, come on, let's go. And we stepped out from under our canopy there, you know, and we're out here where we could see the full sky above us. Over in the southeast is a little black cloud. There was not another cloud in the sky. The sky was just the purest blue. And over there, over this ridge of pine trees, here's this little cloud. And they go, look, it's her sign. That wasn't the sign. It started raining. It rained for 30 minutes. I mean, a pouring rain out of a clear blue sky. The next day, I go back to the fire. All these women keep bringing their babies over to the fire. Where's the fireman that was in the spirit world yesterday? So for 3 days, I'm praying with their babies. They're giving me tobacco and they're giving me something else, you know, another gift. At the end of the Sundance, we're packing up to go home. The dance is over. It's the next morning, you know. And I went down to see Crow Dog, and he's sitting there with about 23, 24 chiefs. They're having their meeting about what we're going to do next year, right? And I walked in and everybody stopped talking. I had a red bundle in my hands, red cloth. I walked up to Crow Dog, I laid it on the table, and I unrolled it. And he smiled and looked up at me, and I said, I can't take these home with me, but you know who needs them. And he smiled at me and he went, and I said, yes. In other words, my mind and my heart were one with the people, and I understood. There were 36 eagle feathers in that bundle. That's the story.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Can we talk about 11th step and how
We're going to. That's what I was just about to say to you.
Yes.
How do you go
right.
back to an A? How important is it for you to keep AA and the shamanism separate for you? Is it? I know, because I think I'm mindful. It's one of these things. We go into a meeting and everyone might mention a higher power. We don't necessarily go into it, but you've just exploded outwards with all this spirituality. Just, you know, how do you bring it back to staying away from a drink one day at a time? Okay.
For me, there are parallels. For instance, the AA program, as it's practiced and as it should be, there's a flexibility, you know, there's certain understandings, but then there's this flexibility. And shamanism is that way too. Like, let's say I'm a truck driver and I need a spirit guide. I need somebody to help me with, you know, my spiritual journey in life. They're not going to send me an aardvark. they're going to send me a horse,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
because I'm traveling all the time. Okay, so, gosh, I had this all figured out.
It's okay.
No, we're constantly figuring it out. As we progress in the steps, we meet God. Well, first we come, and then, how did they say that? We came, and we came to, and then we came to believe, right?
Okay.
So it's a gradual walk to discover our spirituality. And at first we're dealing with ourselves. And then as we move through the steps, our world expands. Now it's the group. And then all of a sudden we get to step 10, 11, 12, and it's about, okay, I'm in the center of where I need to be. Now the Navajo people in the Red Road, they have that wonderful thing that you see on tourist deals, walk in beauty. And there's the prayer that goes with it: beauty before me and behind me, on my left, on my right, above me, below me, and within me. That's the seven grandfathers. That's connection to, I'm walking in the center of the universe. As long as I keep walking connected in a proper way in the spirit unseen world, I can manage my sobriety.
Right.
Because I know that I'm onto something that's much bigger than, you know what? Yeah, maybe I want to go to the soccer match and everyone's having a beer. I don't need a pint today.
Mm.
You know, I'll have a coffee or a tea or bottled water or something, but I don't. And I'm so excited all the time.
Mm.
Oh my God, I see so much beauty in the world, and I enjoy working with my sponsees. I've had a few good ones. I don't, well, you know, look what they've got for a sponsor. The guy's nuts. You know, it's like, and I just, my mother, I have to tell you this. My mother was the kind of person who no one was a stranger for more than 2 minutes. And she was that embarrassing one that you could be in the bus depot, you could be in the line at the grocer's. She had to talk to everybody.
Hmm.
Oh, that's a wonderful coat you've got. Where did you find that? You know,
Yeah.
My mom talked to everybody. She was just like that. And my mother's family were loving and adorable, but the Grubers, oh my God, it was a mixed marriage. She was very English. He was very Irish.
Wow.
And then he was a mayor of a town in California, of Newport Beach in Orange County. So I met all these famous, crazy people, and I didn't know who the hell they were. Well, I recognized John Wayne because I'd seen him in the cowboy films. But, you know, I got a picture of me on Walt Disney's lap.
Wow.
So when I would go from that crazy world out there back to Nebraska on the farm with no electricity, I preferred the spiritual.
Wow. Yeah. Fantastic. So we're into the sort of the back end, last half hour. So again, there's a few questions coming through. I've got a few more that I need to rattle through with that I'm really interested.
Sure.
Are you still, your day, just tell us about, you mentioned meditation before. What's your meditation practice? Can you give us a little bit of an insight into how you commune with spirits and how these visions come about? If you would. Right.
So in a lot of traditional shamanic practice, you use a sonic drive to go to the spirits, a rattle or a chiming bowl or a drum. I get up very early in the morning, sometimes 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I can't play the drum in the house with my wife here, and but I'll get up, and during COVID, I discovered some things. I'm very recent to the iPhone. We've had that discussion. But there's a thing called Calm or something. I play some music and all that. Sometimes I use that. Sometimes I'll sit in the chair and I'll think back to one of those perfect moments in my life where everything was going right. A day when there was beauty, when the weather was perfect. I find myself traveling in my mind to places where the spirits have anointed people or blessed people. And I literally have like this circle of stones I can go to in this beautiful, like a sanctuary place. And I've taught people how to do this, by the way. And so it's an active meditation, because I'll sit down and then I'll ask who can show up today. I've had Buddha, Jesus. I had a very nice discussion with the Grim Reaper, who I actually found him to be quite cheerful. So I call him CG, you know, like the cheerful Grim Reaper.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I was mourning the death of my mother for 3 years now. And I had this discussion with the Grim Reaper, and he goes, well, she's not here. She's in the spirit world. Do you want to let go of that? And I said, please. He said, okay, I'll cut the cords on my way out of here. And the next morning I woke up and I miss my mother and I will grieve her, but the grief was, I'm functioning, you know? So I do spend time every morning. I do check in the evening, and I've got a wood shop out here in the auto garage. And so, it's that whole thing about blokes in their sheds, you know?
Yep, man cave.
I've got a nut and bolt for everything and tools. And so I'm making some things now out in there, and I make things for people and give them away. I'm really good at repurposing old wood, hence the name Woody. I got that when I was a kid in the Boy Scouts. I started a fire in a pouring rain when I was 10 years old, in a pouring rain.
Wow.
And they're like, how did you do that? I said, anybody can do it.
Fantastic.
So for me, it is daily. And there are certain spirits that help me with certain things, you know?
Can I ask you just how you conjure those apparitions? I might not be using the right word.
Yeah.
Is that a process of looking? I don't know. Is it like, do you ask within, or is it you ask out? Is it something that you have to look within for? I'm just trying to get to the nuts and bolts of your actual practice. Is it
right.
Self-inquiry or is it self-outquiry?
Yeah. No, wonderful question. Thank you. It all begins with the heart, and what my intention is to connect with spirits, right? So I give attention to my intention, okay? Attention to my intention. And I'll start here in my heart, and then it's almost like it just sort of projects out.
Wow.
And because I've been doing this practice for 30 years, maybe, for me anymore, it's very automatic. It happens quite quickly. So there's definitely practice involved in it.
So is it love? Are we talking about love here? Is that without being too schmaltzy? Is it love? When you talk about heart?
Yeah, to me, the one thing that abides when everything else is gone is love. Oh, and the dude.
Oh,
you said something about Lebowski earlier, and it didn't leave my head.
He's one of our co-hosts.
Yeah.
The paradigm Lebowski. He's very, very popular, very spiritual. He's amazing.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite films.
Mine too.
You know, I gotta tell you this. Medicine people generally say all kinds of crazy things that are obnoxious and inappropriate. So this friend of mine, he's like, man, he goes, sometimes I got 3 years of sobriety, but sometimes, I really want to, oh boy, I can feel that. And I said, well, do what I do. And he goes, what do you do? What do you do for it? And I said, I turn on the television and I get out the Blu-ray and I put on Train Spotting.
Oh, yeah.
And I watch Train Spotting. And I remind myself how that world was. I don't want to live in a world like that, you know?
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go to the audience. I've got a couple more questions here. I love that thing about the heart coming out. What is God? Who is God? What the hell is God?
In Lakota, They say Tonkashala, which means grandfather, and then they say Wakan Tonka or Wakantaka. All right. And Wakan, Wakan, means mystery, can't be explained.
Mhm.
Tonka is like stone, it's solid. So they don't really say great spirit, they say great mystery, Wakantaka. And in all of their songs, you find that repeating. Wakantanka Unshimalie, grandfather, great mystery, take pity on me. I had a vision when I was 10 years old that deals with this, where I was a light floating in the universe. And then I noticed there were all these other lights, and we were all joined together. And there was a great light in the center of all of it. And in that great light was everything that you would ever want or need. It was love. It was light, love, healing, and life. To me, God is a divine presence that can't be explained. Like the Tao that can be explained is not the Tao.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you meet Buddha in the road, best kill him. It's not really the Buddha.
Okay, got you.
I was in the Denver airport. I got off the airplane. I was going to Portland, Oregon to study with Betsy Bergstrom. The minute my foot touched the carpet, I felt this presence in the airport. I said, oh my God, who is here? And I went to the gate that I was supposed to have. And here was this old lama sitting there with a young woman and another young monk. And I immediately dropped everything I owned in front of him, fell to my knees, kissed his feet. And when I came up, I said, Master or teacher, I haven't seen you in such a long time. And the granddaughter translated, yeah, I haven't seen you in centuries. And I realized it was a teacher of mine from the 7th century, that he was a grand lama in Lhasa. And he had sent me and these other monks off to this monastery that would be in Afghanistan today on the Silk Road, because they needed somebody to run that place. And it was like this immediate homecoming. So sometimes I just find God in the presence of other people. I've sat and looked at people who were completely down and out and told them in their darkest moments, I see the divine light of God in you. Do you want to see it?
Yeah. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going to hog a few more questions here.
Go.
The initial, like, it's kind of like that thing that this youngster is strong with the ways of the Force. From that first moment when you had that vision as a child, has that power stayed the same, or has it grown? Like you said, that 30 years of practice, because the visions. I mean, how do you become a shaman? Is it something that you're born with, or is it their training? Is it essential for training, or is it just like flogging a dead horse if you haven't got that instinct, that gift? Is it something that you need, that inherent? You need to have that power.
Okay. My personal belief is that we're all wired to be able to do shamanic work. Now, how you become a shaman or a shaman depends on, it's Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So I believe that most people are called. I believe that with a lot of people, there's a lineage. I know in my case, when I met that woman in that field and the spirit grandmother came to me, she was 7 generations back and needed to pass her medicine to somebody in this generation. And she had watched waiting for someone. At the very moment that I was having that, my mother was in Omaha, Nebraska, having a baby, and that baby didn't survive. He was alive for about an hour and then he just died, and they couldn't figure out why. He was the 7th boy in a row in my family. So there's people that say that thing about the 7th son. So instead, the mantle went to me.
Right.
I didn't ask to be it. I'm writing a book called The Reluctant Shaman.
Nice.
I think, yeah, I really think most people are kind of called to or led to it. You can't just do a couple of weekend workshops and hang a sign in front of your house. If you're meant to do it, it'll happen. It just happens. It's serendipitous, I think.
Hmm. Wow. Just a quick question, and this might sound a bit silly, but we had a guy here a couple of weeks ago who on this particular podcast who was very big into reincarnation, and he said that he was reincarnated as an alien in a distant galaxy. Is that your experience?
The goddess shell helped my people 8,000 years ago. I personally feel that I'm a star being that came from another place. I was told the name of that place, and I sat down with a Mayan elder and told him the name of that place, and he said, "Oh, that's one of the known worlds. There's something like 24 known worlds in the Mayan constellation of out there." He goes, "That's one of the worlds we know about." And I said, "I know."
Wow.
Because I'm one of your ancestors. And I have had so many things show me that there's a reality that's, my whole life has been the seen and the unseen, putting one foot in one world and one foot in the next. I've seen amazing things.
Wow.
It's all in a day's work.
I think this is fantastic. If you're going to hang around after as well, that'd be great, because I'm sure there's a lot.
Yeah, I've got time. Yeah,
that's great. So
absolutely.
I'm just going to crack on. So the few questions here. I'll let Lebowski ask a question in a minute. I've just got one from Tara here who says, "Our stories are so similar. I am a herbalist healer with the same bloodlines. The question is, how important do you think it is to do cleansing, to remove entities or energy that may be stuck from your drinking days or not serving you? What tools do you use to protect and replenish yourself and your energy when you're doing work for others?" Good question.
Okay. One of the protocols is something I learned from Betsy Bergstrom that I teach everybody. It's called power stacking, where you start by looking at the divine light within you, and you allow that divine light to go to every cell in your body and push out or wash out. And then that energy goes out, and you just keep moving that energy. And then there's other steps in it. You go to a beautiful place in nature that you've actually been to, and you see yourself standing in that landscape on a perfect day. That's the sanctuary. The divine light within me is being reflected by the divine light that's all around me. So that gets me very grounded, both in the spirit world and with a physical place on planet Earth. Then the next thing is dealing with my true self, which is a blueprint for success that I was given by the divine when I came into this life. And then finally, the protector animals. And they're the ones that will shield me or warn me if there's trouble. So that's one of the things I do. I do sage. Of course, in this day and age, the whole thing, you don't want to set off the smoke detector. So it's best to do that out of doors. Yeah. And then sometimes, I don't know, I've had different things that they've told me to do with different people. And I've had people walk in. There was a lady came in and she started telling me a story one day. And there was this black thing in her head that was driving me crazy. It was, behind her right eye. And she's trying to tell me her story. She just flew in from Chicago. And I said, "Just a minute, Linda, hold on." And all I know is I stood up and I reached, and I felt like I was reaching through a wall into another room. And I grabbed this thing, and I've got this thing in my hand that's in the spirit world, and two angels flew in, grabbed it, and took it out the window. And then I sat down, and she sat there on the sofa going like this. And then she reached in her purse and put on these glasses and goes, "My God, I can see out of my eye." And I said, "Well, good. What did you come in here for?" I got a call from the doctor when she went back to Joliet. And the doctor called me up and said, "How did you do it?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I had her scheduled for surgery. And she told me she had like a 20% chance of living because they were going to pull out her eye and go in and get the tumor out of her brain and yada, yada, yada. And she might not survive." And he goes, "How did you do it?" I said, "I didn't do anything. The Creator did it." The humility is, if you turn to the creator, the higher power, and surrender there, it's not a surrender like a military surrender, right? Where you put your gun down and you put your hands up and they treat you like crap, unless you're in Hogan's Heroes. But anyway, sorry, I watched way too much television growing up. But anyway,
I know nothing.
It's a surrender that connects us with the power.
That's good.
Yeah, I hope that answers.
That's fine. Okay, so let's we've got a few questions now.
Go.
Lebowski wants to ask you a question. The Little Lebowski.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
You've answered them all, really. But I have encountered one shamanic energy worker before, and she used the drumming and journeying, and I had an energy type of experience. But my children had also saw her, and they had one had a spirit animal experience, and the other had another kind of journeying. But I was just interested in your experience with that. If we're always surrounded by helpers of whom we can ask for help,
Yeah. Shamanic healing in a nutshell is either removing energies that don't belong there and then returning energies that have been lost, soul retrieval, or power from the universe that needs to come back to a person. If you've been through any kind of grief, if you've been through any kind, and let's face it, as alcoholics, we're pretty good at grieving ourselves and others, and having, various stories about, our past. So returning one to that energy, I think of it like that song by Van Morris, Dweller on the Threshold. I've walked the burning sands and I don't want to wait anymore. I want to enter into the holy, and be that person that I was meant to be. When I do shamanic healing for people in the program, because there are a lot of people that come to me, I always wait until they've made their 30 days. I want to know that they're sincere, that they understand this as a plan of action. They want to get well and they want to stay well. We all come in because we want to quit drinking, but I want to make sure that it's a positive experience if they come for healing. And again, I can't push it. People find out that I'm a shaman. I don't talk about it that much in the group.
Sure.
You don't look like the average shaman.
No.
But thank you. You more than answered my question.
Thank you very much, James.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. I've got the funny hat.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
there. We go.
Oh, God. I feel so
now you're an authentic shaman.
Oh, look at that. That's great. Or a sailor.
I saw this guy on the internet with this crazy blue and gold outfit. And I go, his wife made that for him, but it's a horrible fabric.
Oh, God. Yeah, I think we're already getting.
I'm sure it was done with love.
Yeah. So, moving quite along, Virginia, our beloved hippie cat lover, asks, "Can you describe the afterlife?"
My specialty is working with people that have spirits that are troubling them and clearing places. Spirits always go after nouns, people, places, and things. I have probably cleared 3,000 people. I have watched spirits go to the afterlife. All I can tell you is I open a great light. Sometimes that great light is a shaft of light that goes up and down. I have seen spirits go to the next world and go down. They're not going to hell. It's because in their cosmology, the earth was the safe place to be in the afterlife. Okay. So I've seen spirits go down. I've seen spirits go. I've done this with thousands of people, and I was teaching it in Scotland, and I'd love to go back and teach it again. But anyway, the afterlife to me, many times I call on their family to call on them. They're filling with that divine light, that what I just told you, that safety protocol, and it's filling them up, these spirits, and then the spirits are leaving the human person. And many times the client is sitting here saying, I can see them going into the light and can even describe what they're wearing, even though they had no idea what I was seeing. I've had so many things that have confirmed over and over and over again, this is real. And they go into that great light and they're reunited with their family and there's some sort of celebration. Now, I have not gone all the way into the afterlife. You know, beyond who's born, no traveler returns. Hamlet, sorry. Little play for Shakespeare there. And I think if you cross over that, I don't know that you come back. I've been hit by lightning twice. I've had 8 or 9 near-death experiences. That time on the reservation when I left my body, I didn't breathe for over 8 minutes. And I came back to my body and I was fully functional. So I can only say that the divine did all that.
Right.
I never tell people I can heal them. I always tell them the divine does the healing.
Right.
So,
So quickly before we just go to Kaiser, as another panel member, do you do these ceremonies? Can you do this on Zoom as well or in person? Is that possible to do it over online?
Okay, great question. Some people, if I have worked with you before, I can work with you over the telephone or on Zoom because I've had clients all over the world. When I send soul retrieval energy back to somebody who's in another time zone, I always ask that the spirits give them their energy while they're at rest. The last thing I want to do is to send spiritual energy to somebody and they're driving on the motorway, you know, someplace in New Zealand, and the car goes off the road. You know, what good has that done?
You hit a sheep in New Zealand. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they hit a sheep. I love the cattle in Scotland wearing those wool blankies.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
they were all snug.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, they're very, very warm people in Scotland, that's for sure. So Kaiser, you got a question, another panel member?
I do. Hi, I'm Kaiser. Hi, Woody.
Yes.
My question, I understand shamanism to be like the world's oldest religion, the longest in existence, and then there's others that come on board. You seem to me to have abilities that I either don't have or I'm not aware or open to. And yet, with the 12 steps, when we start to get engaged with the 12 steps, we kind of become alchemized. I don't know. And then we come across the 12th step, which is to carry the message to other people, which can be incredibly healing. With your experience as a certain version of a healer, that is, you have your specialties. I ask you this question: how can someone like myself or someone similar to myself help someone? You're kind of trying to teach a man to fish. How do I help someone? And I'm confining it to maybe the 12 steps or maybe a family member
Right.
that's going through trouble. How would I help someone? How do you help someone? How does someone help another person?
The greatest gift that any human being can give another human being is to be fully present with them. When we are fully present with somebody, we're acknowledging their existence and their importance. When we're telling our story and we say, I understand, you know, your trouble with booze. I can tell you how I did it, or I can tell you what happened to me. The subject of the story that we're telling isn't about us. It's the universal man, woman, human person. You know, the greatest thing we can do is give people time. And when we're giving that time and attention, we're giving the 4 words that describe my life that I meditate on every single day are light, love, healing, and life. And to me, that's almost like the biblical order of creation. You know, light. In the beginning, you know, there was light. Let there be light, right? Love created everything else. but everything went astray somewhere. So now we need healing. And ultimately, the goal of our existence is life, to really be alive. So the simple act of being fully present with somebody opens up the channel so that you can be helpful for that person. You may be the only person that they have met in months or years that has truly cared to listen to them. There are so many people talking. I grew up in a family with 9 kids. I used to tell people, everyone talked all the time and the silence was deafening. Because when everyone's talking, nobody's listening. My grandmother was a living saint. She had cancer. The woman never swore one day in her life, not a single time. She had cancer for 9 years, was dying, and never mentioned it to everyone. Amazing. But it was the gift of that full presence that she gave us. I think that's the starting place. Because your question, we could really sit and talk about that. It says you're from Minnesota?
I am, yes.
Yeah, in the Twin Cities, I have a friend that does shamanism, Timothy Cope,
Yep.
C-O-P-E, rattle and drum. He knows me. Just say Woody, and he'll just shake his head.
Thank you. Your answer confirmed every intuition and knowledge that I had come across. And I don't understand your way of doing things, but yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Kaiser, mate. Good to hear.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful question.
Yeah, it was. So
I'm
listen,
so happy all of you.
we've got a few questions, so we do need to rattle on because we're over time here. But
Yes,
Debbie- sorry.
someone had asked a question in the chat about mezcal or whatever.
Before we come to that, I just want to do it in
Yeah.
order. Debbie, the lovely Debbie from the UK says, you talked about having certain spirits that help with different things. Can you expand on that, please?
Certainly. For soul retrieval, it's the hummingbird. It's Miss Hummingbird. And I've done ceremonies where the hummingbird goes with me. We find the energy and we bring it back, as it's described in like Sandra Ingerman's. And I studied with Sandra Ingerman for a week in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So she is my teacher in soul retrieval. For certain healings, in the Lakota world, I'm known as a bear doctor. Mato the bear is my grandmother healing animal for like physical illnesses. And then there have been others, various others that have helped with things. And sometimes they're not just animal spirits. Sometimes they're human spirits. One of my teachers in the upper world is St. Andrew.
Oh, wow.
And he's a funny guy. I've gone fishing with him, actually. I have, put the net in and all that. And yeah.
Brilliant.
But I hope that answers that question.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Now, yeah, that question that you got was Jill, our friend, I think, in Costa Rica, has asked if it's appropriate, does Woody use herbs, vines, or he mentioned very briefly mezcal?
Yeah. I've never done ayahuasca. The first time somebody handed peyote to me, I said, I can't do this because I did drugs before, and I treated those drugs in an irreverent way. I didn't take them in a sacred way.
Okay.
I took them because I wanted to get screwed up, and escape my problems. But the problems kept coming back.
Sure.
The only time I really did, and they call it the grandmother, the peyote, was someone gave me this herbal tea, and they said, drink this herbal tea. Your back will feel so much better. And of course it tasted horrible. So I drank more, And then I said, I don't think I'm supposed to be drinking this. Is this a slip? No, there's no alcohol in it. And I just said, thank you very much, and handed them the thing back. And, boy, the rest of the afternoon, it's rainbows and unicorns.
Right. Okay. Right.
So I don't think people have to do But, for some people, that's part of their journey. That works for them.
And obviously on this particular program or on this podcast, we don't condone the use of any kind of drugs or any mind altering substances whatsoever.
Right.
So that's not part of my journey or many of the other people in this room. So that, just to be clear with everyone, we're not condoning that whatsoever.
Yeah, clean and clear is the way I want to stay.
Clean and clear, absolutely. And thank you very much for endorsing that. Now, Kurt, he's the mysterious stranger. Kurt, you've got a question.
Hey, thanks, Woody. You mentioned Sandra in New Mexico, and I'm wondering how you came across Sandra, and maybe I've read Michael Harner's book, Cave and Cosmos, and I just was curious how you came across Sandra and that.
Sure. I met her in July 2000. She came to Omaha as a teacher for the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. And for years, she taught all of their soul retrieval classes. And of course, she wrote the book Soul Retrieval. So I actually met her in 2000, and we instantly hit it off. And I thought, I want to look into working with her. And then there was someone here who was teaching her Medicine for the Earth course. She's an absolutely brilliant mind. And it doesn't hurt that her and Betsy Bergstrom are good friends, and all three of us are Capricorns. Go figure that, But that's how I met her, and I've did a 2-year study with her after I did soul retrieval. It's been a while since I've seen her, but I just haven't gotten back to Santa Fe. You have to get a $400 car to drive there. No, I had this 82 Chevy Caprice, and these guys at a gas station tried to buy it off me. And my friend from Scotland, Stephen, was sitting in the car and putting fuel in, the gasoline. And these guys are offering me like $3,000 for this car because they want to make a lowrider out of it. And he's like, for Christ's sake, sell the bloody thing. We'll rent a car. I said, no, I got to have my own. Anyway.
Oh, well, thanks
Next
very
question.
much. Thanks very much.
I'm sorry.
We're almost at the end here. So just a couple of things. We've got some announcements about next week. Andy, you just want to tell us who we've got next Friday?
Sure, Dave. Next Friday, we have Father Stephen Donnelly, who's a Catholic priest. His book is Saint to Sinner to Saint. And his book talks about his battles with alcohol and cocaine, while retaining and leaning on his Catholic faith. So it should be good.
Wow, okay, that's great. Yeah, very excited about that one. And just to say also that we, if you want to help us keep this going, this is not an AA meeting, but we do look for funds to keep the Zoom account and the podcast going. So there is a PayPal account in the chat. If you want to contribute, you're welcome. You don't have to. It's totally free. So, but that's entirely up to yourselves. So, final question for you, Woody. It's been so good to have you here. And this is how we finish all the podcasts. So, you've won the lottery. The spirit guides have seen fit to give you $1 trillion, and you are filthy mega rich. And you decide, what the hell of it, you're going to pack the family up and you're going to buy a super yacht, one of those massive super yachts with 50 bedrooms, and you're going to sail out of the Pacific Harbor with all the streamers and the bunting going and everything, and your confetti, and the world's richest man, and you're sailing south. But unfortunately, somewhere off the coast of Fiji, you run aground. You hit a submerged coral reef. The boat starts to sink. You've got seconds to get off board. You chuck the family off overboard, and all you've got time is to grab a plastic bag and your favorite book from the bookcase. You grab the book, put it in the bag, jump overboard, and swim to a local island, to a deserted island, to await rescue, and you've only got this book to read. What's the book? Who's it by, and why?
The book is The Walking People by Paula Underwood. The Walking People is the written down account of the traditional stories of the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois nation. And it goes all the way back to before they left Asia, how they came across the Bering Strait, how they traveled throughout North America. It explains how they built the Serpent Mound in Ohio and why. It ties together, it hints of Atlantis. It's the one book I won't give to anybody. I won't lend it. I mean, it's written down the middle of the page like Beowulf, you know?
Uh-huh.
And by the time you finish the third story, your mind is thinking indigenous. She transports you into that world. That book, there's probably 100 other great books I probably should have mentioned, but that one, the steps I have in my heart, I can sit and write them all back down. I read the blue book, big book every day. I read 12 and 12. I've got the little red book. Breathing Underwater by Richard Rohr is fantastic. Came to Believe, you know, they're all right here next, you know, because I'm a secretary in a meeting. So, you know, well, today we're reading As Bill Sees It, Daily Reflections. But there's something about that Walking People book that just transports me to another world.
So it's called The Walking People.
Walking People, yeah.
And it's a traditional piece of literature. There's no...
Yes, it's indigenous Iroquois. It's literally like their Bible and history book.
Right.
And it is an amazing story. God, I'd really like to throw in Voices of the First Day. Voices of the First Day is about indigenous culture in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And the man that wrote the book was a client of mine. And I can't go into that part of it, but he sent me a copy of the book because I was describing things that I was seeing in ceremony when I prayed 9 days with him. Every day I prayed for him, or with, you know, in the morning and in the evening, until this problem went away. And the proceeds of that book, he told me, were going to a senior center, like a community center, in the Northern Territories.
Oh, yeah.
And he lives down on King Island in Tasmania.
Wow.
I think
That's a long way away.
that's what he called it, King Island.
Yeah.
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 So that's a great read, Voices of the First Day.
Thank you very much. That's great. So listen, we're going to stop recording in a minute. I know you want to hang around, so that'll be great, because I'm sure there's lots of people here who want to talk to you.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just to say thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Thanks very much to my team, particularly Anne Kavanagh, James Braun Lebowski, Kaiser in Minnesota. Thank you very much for all your support. And thank you very much, Woody, for coming along. I hope you come back to us anyway, mate. We're here every Friday at the same time, at the same Zoom number. This podcast will be available probably tomorrow on iTunes and Spotify, and it will be on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So with all that,
Excellent.
Thank you very much. And we're going to stop recording. Boom. All right. There you go, everyone. On mute. How's that? So
I feel like I've been to church.
I know.
Oh, thank you.
What a preacher!
Fabulous.
Wow, what a great.
Thanks, Woody.
That was fantastic.
Thank you, Woody.
Thank you, Woody, so
Yeah.
much.
Can I sing a Lakota song for you?
You
Yes.
better. You
Yes,
better,
song?
man. You better.
Okay, it doesn't have a lot of words, but this is a song that's traditionally sung when they're doing the piercing at the Sundance. It's also sung when a family member dies and they're taking them off, you know, to bury them. I sang this for my mother at her grave.
I'm saying for Brian.
Okay.
Can everyone just mute themselves first so we get the proper recording, if you wouldn't mind? Thank you.
Yeah, you can record. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. we-ya-ya, we-ya-ya, hey-ya, hey. We-ya-ya, we-ya-ya, hey-ya, hey-ya, hey. Wakan Tonka Oche Malaye, Wanakti Chale Mawelo, hey-ya, hey. We-ya-ya, we-ya-ya, hey-ya, hey. We-ya-ya, we-ya-ya, we-ya, hey-ya, hey. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Blessings to everyone.
Blessings to you.
What the lyric part, Wakantanka Unshimalie, is great mystery. Take pity on us, have mercy on us. And then the last part says, we are doing this so the people might live. We are doing this prayer. We are calling upon the spirits of the universe to help us and to make this possible. And that Sundance, people go in and pray for their families. I've seen people cured of cancers. I've seen people who had lost their voice being able to speak. I've done some plant medicine with Crow Dog where I had no idea what I was digging up and how to do it. And the plants were telling me how to prepare them. I'm just like, but thank you for letting me sing.
Please do another one. That was just amazing. It was beautiful.
There's a lot of good thank you songs, but yeah, we can sing all afternoon.
Wow. It's just one. So if there's any questions, I bet Donald's got a question. I can see Donald and Rita there. Just
yeah, go ahead.
Go on, Donald and Rita. I know he wants to. Look, he's edging. He's salivating. Look at him. Come on, Donald. There you go.
No, I'm not salivating. I just want to thank one of you. You got right through to me, and you made me feel as if I'm not so mad after all. And I felt very connected, and that was beautiful. You know what I mean? And the question was, I went out and I got a call in the middle of your thing, and it was from ancestors, and it was going down an old line. I don't know what it's about. I said, look, I'm going back into the shaman on Zoom, and I want to hear and feel more. But it was a call from an ancestral line way back, and I put it down to you for some reason or other. So whatever it is.
Okay, it involved in the answer to your inquiry with them is water. Something about letting something flow. Yeah. It could be a release. It feels like a release and then something new. You know, like when we empty one thing out, we make room for the new energy to come in. And I don't know what it's about. I don't need to. That's just, Grandma says, water and a flow. And it may have something to do with sacred water near you. So if that's helpful, I hope.
Thank you. Could well be.
Rita, have you got anything you want to ask? Do you want to say anything?
No, thank you so much. I really, I traveled with you in what you were saying, and thank you so much. But I'm interested in the name of the goddess, because I haven't had an experience where that book was handed to me for my daughter with that name on it. I think it's the same name, but she's a star child. And when you said the name of your goddess, is it the Mayan? Yes. I think it's the same book. I was told to hand it to her, you know.
Yeah, yeah. It's they say E-shell. But it's spelled IXCHEL.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rita.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
What about Joe C., our favorite Canadian, mate? How about you?
Hey, thanks for another great session, Tom team. I have a question. I'm this sort of resident atheist here. Sometimes is welcome in a in a AA meeting as a rattlesnake in a basket of fruit, but for the most part, loved here. And so yeah, anyway, I go through life. Sometimes you have to read the room before you know how much to disclose. And I know people who have had white light experiences, and they have a harder time in the rooms than I do. People say, we don't want to hear that shit around here. And I go, whoa, that's like a Bill Wilson experience. And so how do you sort of navigate your sort of outside the material world experience in the recovery rooms?
When I'm sitting in a circle, I really prefer circles to the chairs in a row and the podium in the front, because that feels so much like school, where you're up front and you're lecturing or something, and it just feels, the circle is the natural form in the universe. The sun, the earth, the moon, everything's a circle, right? And so for me, when I'm in that circle and I'm listening to people in the shares, or we're reading from the big book, or whatever the speaker is that day, I can feel that this presence just sometimes coming out of me or moving. It's like it's moving. Nothing ever feels static when I'm in a place, because regardless of how everybody is calling upon their higher power, regardless of who it is or how it is, we're all like approaching something in the universe for help. And to me, there's no, they talk about humility. Humility isn't being humiliated. Humility is about admitting that I have a place, that I have limitations, that I need good boundaries, and I'm not always going to be driving the ship. We can't all be bosun's mates at the wheel. Somebody's got to put the sails up and down, and somebody sure as hell's got to scrape the barnacles off the bottom. And I've spent a good deal of my life scraping barnacles, but I appreciate some of my favorite people in my San Francisco group are the atheists in the group, because they're honest. One thing about AA, if you're and I've been in rooms that didn't feel very honest, where you've got 10 people and they want to be the only ones ever speaking. There's a Zoom group here in my town that I went to several times, and I finally put in the chat, for Christ's sake, let the women talk.
Yeah.
These men are just hogging the meeting. Let the women talk. Let's hear some wisdom, But I don't know. Does that help?
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. I think John Schiller is
Yes.
regular here. John, you got a question as well, haven't you?
Oh, well, first a comment, Woody. I'm not quite sure Bill Wilson had what you've experienced in mind when he wrote the 11th step. How far that can actually take one. Now, in my life, I didn't have the kind of visions you've had. However, I had, when I was 15 years old, what I call my first transcendental experience.
Right.
And people who have had experiences like mine often relate to guys like you as people who have vision envy. We wish we had visions and connections, entities outside of our three-dimensional world or four-dimensional world. But I personally have not. And yet the experience I had when I was 15 was totally mind-blowing to me. I was working on my little farm my parents owned on Long Island. And in the middle of the field, when I was doing my work, I just stopped in my tracks. And in retrospect, all I can say is that my left brain shut down. I stopped thinking about my girlfriend, my challenges in school, my day-to-day, concerns and interests. All that stopped, and I was just aware. And I stood there with an irrigation pipe over my head. And I felt like a conduit of energy going from the earth to the sky and back. I felt like an electric current was going through me. And I've talked to people who have studied this sort of thing, and that's sort of a Kundalini type experience. But it related to nothing conceptual, nothing from another world that I could identify as a multi-dimensional being coming into my awareness. And I got to tell you, at the age of 15, that was transformational. However, it didn't lead to a path that you have followed. And I'm just curious about that because, I mean, that altered my life until now. I'm almost 88 years old, and I still am resonating with that because I've achieved that state at various times through meditation and contrary to our policy, also through the psilocybin experience with mushrooms. It was identically the same thing. It was your left brain shuts down and all of a sudden you're open to the power of the universe. And you feel it flowing through you. I mean, literally, you feel it. I mean, you're sitting on a stump and breathing, and it felt like the entire universe was breathing with me, expanding and contracting. And I don't know where to put that. I can't run around the world talking to people about that experience because it's not traumatic to the average person. Whereas your message is totally mind-boggling. Like you're in connection with an entire other universe or dimension that I have never visited. And yet I had those seminal experiences that lead me toward accepting what you're saying. And it's really a strange thing because when I was 12 years old, 3 years before that experience, I had pretty much determined that I'm an atheist. I didn't believe what the religious people were telling me as a child.
Right.
And yet, I'm not a full-blown atheist. I think there's something else going on in this universe. And occasionally, a few of us get a taste of that. But I haven't got a sufficiently powerful taste that you have had. So I can't run around the world giving advice to other people. I bring this up at AA meetings from time to time, and you know they bring up the
off topic.
the cease and desist and so on. Yeah, so I just want your comment on that because some of us seem to be on the fringe of what you're talking about, and yet do not have the concrete experiences that you're
John, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important for us to all realize that each one of us, you know, they say you can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes it's the other way around. It's like every one of us is different, but we're all the same. It's like bubbles coming up out of a stream. I was in a meeting on the res, and this old guy was sitting there, and he hadn't shared anything. He came to 3 or 4 meetings. He hadn't said a word, and you know, and it's the middle of summer. It's July. It's hot out, and out of nowhere there was this pause, and he goes, "Snowflakes. You're all a bunch of snowflakes." And we were thinking, what is he saying to us? That we're all flaky? That we're crazy? He goes, listen to what I'm trying to tell you. He said, every one of us in this program is a snowflake. We have this beautiful design that the Creator made, and each one of us is different, but we're all going to fall to the earth, and we're all going to join together and cover the land in this glistening white blanket that is so beautiful. We complain about, oh, I can't get to the store. I can't get to my cousin's house, or, you know, because of the snow. But look how beautiful it is. And he said, in the spring, when all of us melt, then those tears of ours in our experience will water the earth for the next generation to come. You know, that declaration of unity at the end of the meeting, he says, it's not just for us, but all those future people who are going to come into this room. What you had, it was a complete spiritual experience of enlightenment. It's how I would describe it. That's just my opinion. But it's like, to me, when I look at the AA program, I shocked the group last week. I said, you know, Dr. Bob pulled one over on Bill. And, you know, I'm always the last one to share, so people are like half asleep, right? Because they're tired of listening to shares. And I said, he pulled one over on him because I think he was really a Buddhist. And they're like this, you know, now they're listening. And I said, if you think about it, the Buddha is the higher power, can't really be defined. And the Sangha, the group, is the fellowship. And the Dharma is working your steps, working your program. So if you take refuge in the Buddha and work the program and you're in the fellowship or in the circle, it's very Buddhist. And I said, these guys stepped well beyond the boundaries of just Christianity, though it works. I mean, you can be as Christian. I have 3 brothers who are ministers. We have the most intense conversations. And I just do it all with love. I think, Jeb, you've got your little hand up. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Woody. This has been an eye-opening and maybe a mind-opening experience for me. I want to first comment about when you were asked about how you experienced the presence. I was immediately reminded of a 5th century Christian hymn that has a stanza that reads, Christ be with me, Christ within me, Christ behind me, Christ before me, Christ beside me, Christ who win me, Christ who comfort and restore me. And then it goes on. And that I know that experience. So much of my 42 years of recovery have been really trying to listen to the spirit within, mind within. I will tell you, before that, I was very aware of other voices, other presences, spirits. And I mean, I saw things and heard things from an early childhood that helped me to survive. I had no idea where they were coming from. But I think I have to say this out loud so I hear it. And that is that I think this is, for me, the universe inviting me to begin to connect more with that other world. Years ago, I did some things in shamanistic practices and so forth that helped me to see and experience a power that I had no idea was mine to grasp, to be a part of. And now I'm returning, and because I'm an old man now. I'll be 82. I'll be 82 in a couple of months. And I'm there at that door, opening another door of perception, awareness, experience, and power. I don't know why I'm here, except that these meetings, these group things have just, I love the sincerity, the vulnerability, the openness of people who share like you have. That's just what you do, what you are. And, I don't know what, it's just like an invitation to go further. And I have to share 2 other things. When I was confirmed in the Episcopal Church in 1967, after years of things, I had an experience when Bishop Horace B. Donegan laid hands on me that was electric. It went through my whole body. And that was a conversion for me. But more recently, because I've done a lot of work in tapping and other things, the energy field therapy, or whatever you want to call it, techniques.
Right.
I discovered that when I massage this point at the base of the ring finger and the little finger, right there where the bones connect there. When I massage that, guess what happens? I feel that surge of energy that starts in my chest, and if I keep it up long enough, it goes up to my head and down to my feet. I have no understanding of what's happening. All I have is the experience of energy that I didn't know. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I didn't share any of the stuff that happened when I was in Scotland teaching, but one day they had a phone there where I could call the States. It was over in Stephen's house, not in the lodge. And I was over there talking to my wife. It was 1 o'clock in Scotland, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning in Omaha. So I was talking to my wife on the phone, and all of a sudden she said, you need to go. There's trouble over there. One of your students is coming to get you. I said, okay. So I hung up the phone, and I went to the door. I grabbed my coat and I put on my boots. And when I opened the door, here was one of the gals standing there, and she goes, Woody, we have a shamanic emergency. I said, there's no emergency. And we walked over there and we solved the problem. But then at the end of that session, after 4 days of teaching, we had this where we danced around. We put the altar in the floor in the middle of the room, and we danced around, and everybody's beating their drums and rattling, you know. And at the end of all this energy building up, everybody just stopped right in their tracks. And this woman began to sing this tone. And pretty soon, everyone in the room was just toning and, you know, singing and the, oh my God. And all of a sudden I felt this huge presence come into my body, and I'm looking around the room and I don't see the room anymore. And I began to sing. Now, nobody taped this, but I began to sing and I had no idea what I was singing. And the first song that came out of my mouth, it was beautiful. And it came up and it came down and it came up and it came down, and it repeated 3 times. And then all of a sudden, something shifted, and I felt this shift, and I began to sing again. And this was similar but different. And again, you know, there was this singing up and singing down. When I finished singing, we were pretty much done for the evening. And it was, you know, let's go get some tea. And some people wanted to go out and have a smoke. And before anybody left the room, there was this lady there from Wales. And she goes, Woody, I didn't know you could speak Welsh. She said, I heard the old tongue. And I said, really? And somebody in the other corner of the room says, oh no, that was the first tongue maybe, but the second one was Gaelic. I could hear my grandfather singing through you. And I said, my people came from here on my mother or my father's side anyway, you know? And I am a direct descendant of Robert the Bruce. And I'm a descendant of this good King David that came out of Wales. So I don't know who was singing through me, what spirits, but it was a marvelous experience. I was like, people, I haven't studied any of this bit. I think of, you know, like the apostles, when they came out of that upper room and all these songs came out of them. You know, I've always enjoyed reading like Meister Eckhart and, you know, some of these great minds. Joseph Campbell, I have everything by Joseph Campbell. You know, we're always learning, and it's just, I'm going to have to go.
Well, thank you
very much, everyone. And in the chat is how to get a hold of me. I do return emails to people in text when I can. I'm very new at technology. The only reason I have a phone, my son ended up buying this phone in China. Oh, there's the last story. Shamans always tell thousands of stories. The last story of the day is my son goes to work in China at a theater. He's there a month and he loses his phone. And he calls the police to turn in a report because he can't find. He looks at the hotel, he looks at the theater, can't find the phone. These two police show up and they're asking him questions. And there's a fella on his theater staff there from the UK, and he comes by and he looks at my son very quickly, says, "Don't go anywhere, don't leave with them." And then he walks around and sits down. And when the police get to this point, they've been taking notes, scribbling on the paper, right, their notebook. And you get to this point, and the guy says, "Oh, by the way," he says, "I think Leonard found your phone. We found a phone backstage." And John goes to the police. He says, "Oh," he says, "I think we found my phone. I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't waste your time. I really love China. You guys are amazing." Because they were like, "No, come to the station with us. Come to the station with us." So anyway, the police leave, and this guy looks at my son and he goes, "This your first time in China?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I've been here on and off about 6 years." And he said, "I knew 4 people personally who left with the police and we never saw them again."
Wow.
And he goes, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, don't do anything with the police in this country." He says, "I just can't trust them." So my son says a little prayer and asks the universe. And he goes down and he buys this phone, this iPhone, there in China, to replace his old one. And gets it all hooked up to his service, and all that. And a couple days later, he gets a call from a friend of his. He worked for 10 years in Las Vegas for Cirque du Soleil. And he gets his call and he goes, "Hey, John," he goes, "I hear you're working in China now." And he said, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "Where are you at?" "Oh, I'm in Wuxi at the National Theater." And he goes, "Oh, okay." He says, "Hold on, let me write that down." And he goes, "So how did you lose your phone?" And he says, "How did you hear about my phone?" And he goes, "Well, remember I worked when the Chinese had the Olympics. I did the lighting for their opening and closing ceremonies. And I got a phone call from this guy in China who found your phone." And he goes, "Oh, Las Vegas, Nevada. Somehow they had a way of, getting his name and number off of it, right?" And he goes, "We know somebody in Las Vegas." So they called this other theater manager who says, "Yeah, I know John Gruber." The next day, the cab driver came with his phone and handed it back to him and apologized for all that. "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's my fault that it was left in my cab. And, please don't say anything bad to the authorities about me," and, all that. And so he got his phone back. But, the spirits are working to help all of us each and every day. And I believe in a loving divine presence, not the punishing God. I had plenty of that punishing God growing up. I just reject the model altogether. I don't want anything to do with that one. To me, love abides. And I'm so grateful for my ancestors. My Irish ancestors connected me with the spirit of Manannan MacLear, the son of the sea god. And he's one of my helpers. And I've got a few others. It gets busy. And people that say, "Oh, it must be wonderful to be able to talk to these spirits all the time." I said, "No, it isn't. Because you have to tell them, I'm going to bed now. Come back tomorrow. I'll put the kettle on at 6 a.m. We'll see you then. Let me sleep." So Thank you, everyone. I really have to go. And travel well with many blessings. And please be well. And remember, love abides. Spread love with your family and even with the stranger, because you never know.